and welcome to another playbook. This one is on a topic that I obviously enjoy a lot: books. 5 must-read book for product managers. Right now, you could argue and sort of ask why 5 and why not 10 or 15, and why these specific 5 books as opposed to hundreds of other books which are really helpful for product builders, for engineers, for designers, for product managers. But one has to, when you're building a list, one has to start somewhere. And I consider these 5 books that we'll be discussing in today's video as the most important books that you could perhaps read, if you want to develop your skills as a product builder. There are a whole bunch of other books which are equally important, maybe perhaps more important. But these are the 5 books that I think can have a potentially a big impact on your career and your ability as a product builder. So let's jump in. The first book is William Zinsser's classic on writing well. Now, I consider writing a very important product manager's superpower, right? And this probably deserves a separate video on why writing is important. But writing is the way in which product managers communicate to their teams, communicate to everyone within their organization. And this is how work gets done, right? Whether it's setting up the vision and strategy for your product, so whether you're writing memos or you're writing emails, or whether it's about coming up with tactics, the decisions that you make and how those decisions are captured and how those decisions are communicated, or if it's about execution, it's actually coming up with product requirement documents and spec documents and specification documents and sharing it with your team and sort of making sure that what you have in your mind, right, what collectively the team has in their mind is actually built right in the exact same way. So communicating through the written word with clarity and brevity is a core PM skill. So if you want to become a good product builder, whether you want to be a great engineer, you want to be a good designer, you want to be a good PM, to develop the ability to write well. And On Writing Well is a phenomenal book. It's not the longest book in the world. It's very to the point and gives phenomenal lessons on learning the craft of writing nonfiction really well. Next is this is one of those books which it's like the biggest well-known secret in the world. Pretty much anyone and everyone who loves reading books and who are successful in one way or the other have read this book and used this book. And despite the fact that so much is written and said about this book, I don't know why this book is not a much bigger hit than it should be. This book is a gift. It genuinely is a gift. So if you want to understand how people's minds work, the kind of biases that they suffer from, please go and read Robert Cialdini's classic book, Influence, right? The Psychology of Persuasion. It's almost sort of, one has to give a caveat to people that this book can be used for a lot of evil purposes, right? This book could be, you could take the learnings of this book and become an evil marketeer if you so wanted to. But the book has so many nuggets of truth that in terms of understanding the human mind, in terms of understanding how people's psychology works and how human beings work, this book is phenomenal. And as a product builder, it's very critical for you to build consensus and influence decisions and influence people around you. So that's an important part of the job, and which is why I highly recommend that you read this book and imbibe its lessons in your day-to-day living. Right? Thinking. Now, thinking is a core product builder skill, right? As a PM, your job is to think. And Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, I think it's a masterpiece. It's the Bible of how the human brain works and how human psychology works and how human beings solve problems, right? So whether you want to understand how the human mind works, or if you want to understand the different ways in which people solve problems, there are ways in which you sometimes work in a very reactive, on the spot way, and then there is more deliberate long-term thinking. When should you be thinking on your feet, and when should you be thinking in a more deliberate manner? For all these things, reading Thinking Fast and Slow is a must read, right? To understand how the human mind works, and to understand as a product builder, when do you use these two very different gears in your mind, thinking slow and then thinking fast. I personally do think that product builders have to do a lot more of the thinking slow bit But a lot of us were trained and through our schooling system, as well as the way we gave exams, etc., in thinking fast. Even the interview process is actually more about thinking fast and less about thinking slow. But in reality, product builders have to sort of almost force themselves to think a little bit more deliberately and slow down the pace at which they're thinking about problems. So do read this book to try and understand why these different gears are relevant to you as a product builder. Decision making. Now, as a product builder, day in and day out, your job is to make decisions. And the quality of the outcome is very dependent in that way on the quality of decision making, right? If you make more and more good decisions over a long period of time, the quality of outcome will improve, because the only thing in your control is the quality of your decision making. The quality of outcome does depend on other factors which are not in your control, like luck, like how the market is functioning, right? So control the quality of your decision making. That's the only thing you can do. And as a product builder, one of the big tasks that you have is decision making. Annie Duke's book, Thinking in Bets, is perhaps one of my all-time favorite books. It's a book I've highly recommended. It's a book I've created a playbook on also in the past. So I personally think it's a must-have for anyone who's in the tech world or who's in the product building world, but it's definitely a must-read for product managers. So good decision making is at the heart of being a good product builder. Thinking in a probabilistic manner, like a good poker player, is a skill worth having. And we can only improve the quality of our decision making. We don't have control over the quality of outcomes, and which is why this is a critical book to read. The last book, the fifth book that I would recommend, is Cal Newport's classic Deep Work. Now, as a PM, the classic sort of conflict that you would have is this conflict that has been very famously called sort of the maker versus manager dilemma, right? Because part of you is a maker. You build things, in a very hands-on way. You work with engineers, you work with designers, and you build a product. But part of it, and it's part of the title, product manager, part of it is managing, right? So, and that involves these very short sort of bursts of meetings, catching up with people, building consensus, getting them on the same sort of, the same level as you, making sure that everyone understands why we are building what we are building. So you are in this classic conflict, maker versus manager conflict, right? And the weird part is that the quality of your work is actually very dependent, and your success is very dependent on working in a very deep, meaningful way. So really sort of putting your head down in a distraction-free way, putting in the hours, crafting a really good strategy, coming up with a really good product. Product building is all about deep work, right? But the part of your job also requires you to sort of manage things, and which is done in short bursts of sort of meetings, which is essentially not deep work. So you have to sort of play both these sides on a day in and day out basis, which is, there's a lot of context switching in going from deep work to not doing deep work. It affects engineers and designers in a big way. We also live in a world which is very heavy with distraction, whether it's emails or Slack messages, etc. So your ability to do deep work is very, very critical, right? So these are the 5 books that I recommend. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it makes sense. If in this year there are only 5 books that you're planning to read, please read these 5 books, and they will help you become better product builders. They'll give you a way of thinking. They'll provide you a lot of frameworks which will help you improve as an engineer, as a designer, or as a product manager, right? And I hope you've been enjoying these playbooks. See you in the next one. Goodbye. Take care.